Hey everyone, Jay here. I wanted to talk today just kind of by myself for a few minutes about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and where the game is at currently. When it comes to fighting games, I don't consider myself the best, and I certainly don't consider myself like, a master of understanding balancing mechanics. That said, I consider myself kind of an everyday player, just a person who enjoys video games, who, when one comes out that I enjoy like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I don't dedicate my entire life to learning every tiny little detail behind it, but I do enjoy the game, and I do have fun with it. I have played this game on and off since release. I've really liked the story mode in particular, especially against the CPU or the AI, and I know that for a lot of people who go on these games to sweat their buns off and kick someone else's butt, that might not be your playstyle. Now, every fighting game does have problems when it comes to accessibility if you really want to, dig in and look at it that way, because at the end of the day, they are mechanics-based games that if you no-life them or only play that game, they are going to reward you specifically with wins every single time. You could call that just skill, and in a lot of games it is. However, in other games like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I would argue that also a big part of that is learning to actually abuse game mechanics, not just use them, but abuse them. The fact that the entire meta of this game online is basically just countering your opponent over and over and over and over again until somebody makes a minor millisecond long mistake, or even the fact that it's basically just about getting behind your opponent and then obliterating them. These are not exactly fun mechanics when it comes to online play, and I do think that they've been a problem since the beginning, but they were a problem that I thought would kind of be ironed out, along with the single-player content not really having any additions to it, after the original base story. It's pretty much just what it was at launch. These are things, along with customization of characters, that I thought they might add more in with, but unfortunately they have not. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about that today, so if you do enjoy this video, my wife Jill and I talk about a lot of different anime or Japan-centered things on this channel that we enjoy. We have a fun time. There is a playlist of Dragon Ball videos that I would love if you checked out. And I do have a question of the day for you, which is, how do you enjoy games like this? Now, for me, I often get on games like this, like Injustice or Mortal Kombat or Dragon Ball, because I really enjoy the characters. And so at the end of the day, online competitive, it's kind of like a secondary thing to me. But I know a lot of people, that's their preferred method of play, some of them not even caring if a game has an arcade or a story or single player or anything. So I guess I'm interested in what you think about games like this. I often find myself returning to games like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero to play around with that story or against other characters, but I feel like I'm in the minority. When I'm looking at this game and its casual player base, I truly believe most of those people left. And while I do know that MLG online players don't want to hear this, if you don't have a casual player base who enjoys the game for what it is, or likes playing, against the AI, or likes getting on and, buying a DLC or something, you don't really have a longevity of game. Because at the end of the day, this game, 4 weeks after its release, at least on Steam, had already lost 90% of its player count. Now you might look at that and say, okay, it's a fighting game. That's going to happen. You're going to lose your casual player base, and you're going to just have those hardcore people stick around. But I would argue plenty of fighting games have still been able to have a decently dedicated player base, both casual and hardcore, or even somewhere in between, without just losing and hemorrhaging all of those players. Even back in April of 2021, there was actually an article, I should say, by The Gamer, which looked at the player count, and it was at an all-time low on Steam of less than 500 players, which is not very good for a game that isn't that old. Now, it's kind of sad for me to see, because I think this game has a lot of potential, and I think there are a lot of different ways you can take the Dragon Ball series when it comes to video games, and we've seen many of them over the years. There are other Dragon Ball games out there currently if you're not enjoying this one, but when I first played this game, to me it was a lot of the things I wanted in a modern Dragon Ball fighting game. But as time went on, I noticed that those issues, like the broken mechanics the ability to abuse them instead of actually learn moves, the ability to just abuse basic counters and basic mechanics to get behind your opponent over and over again. Those things were never actually fixed, and I really do think they pushed away the everyday player. They pushed this game into a position where now there's even all kinds of memes on Reddit and different places basically of like, hey, you know, the hardcore players who know how to use those mechanics have kind of made everybody else leave. I mean, people are noticing that. But at the end of the day, the longevity of an online game is not permanent, and we know that. So how can this game become the best thing it could possibly be? Well, you could fix a lot of those mechanics first off, even for offline battles, but since that isn't happening, you could also focus on strong DLC. You could focus on more arenas. You could focus on a plethora of new characters from the Dragon Ball movies to GT to even the series that we haven't seen. You could focus on maybe a more toned back experience reminiscent of the original Dragon Ball. I mean, we have the World Martial Arts Tournament stages in this game, but there's not really a lot from that original Dragon Ball before Z. You know, this game is missing a lot of different content features that it could have put in here by now. And even now the hardcore people are saying, like even just not even the everyday people, but the hardcore player base that is still on this game is kind of saying, hey, what about new arenas? Why is there no new stages? Why do we have the same content over and over recycled? I guess it's just kind of frustrating to me to watch because it feels like other Dragon Ball games have gotten a lot more support that actually did listen to the player base. The Xenoverse games, especially Xenoverse 2, continues to impress its player base to this day. And yet Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, it feels like ever since day one, they haven't really been listening to what anyone wanted out of the game. Yeah, I know you can't rule everything by committee. At the end of the day, you also have to have agency as a developer. But if your agency as a developer is pushing away 90% of your player base, and then later on pushing it even further into the ground for a series that is actually mind-blowingly popular across the entire world, that's not a very good thing. There is something wrong here. This could be one of the best Dragon Ball games ever made if they would actually go back in and add some single-player content. If they would go back in and add more what-if scenarios, something that I covered in a previous video, that actually would enhance that solo portion of the game. The portion that's going to actually be around when in the future the online inevitably shuts down. You could do something like that. This game could be even better with more arenas, more stages to actually fight in, more cosmetics for your characters that actually give you a purpose to unlocking something. You know, I don't really think just pushing ranked matches and pushing a couple of fan favorites here and there is going to cut it. At launch, this game didn't have a bunch of content even from the Dragon Ball superhero movie that had to be added in later on. And now, instead of doing these things that I think could actually enhance the game's experience and bring more people back for years to come, you know, even making this a game that maybe people want to play in 20 years, on their own or on the couch against a friend, instead of doing that kind of thing, what they're doing is, well, we'll throw in base form Shallot from Dragon Ball Legends. That character could have been in here from the beginning. You know, that character is a character who Dragon Ball Legends has been around for quite a long time. And I like Shallot. I'm actually one of the people who's played through the story of Dragon Ball Legends and very much enjoyed it as kind of a side little Dragon Ball hurrah, a little experience of fan service going through these different characters and their stories. I thought that was very fun. And Shallot's cool. I'm happy to see Shallot. But there was a mod months ago adding Shallot into the game unofficially on PC with multiple transformations, not just base form Shallot. Do you see what I'm saying? It feels to me like the fans and the modders and the hardcore players and even the casuals, these people who all know what they want out of this series and have helped make Dragon Ball successful for decades now, they're just kind of disregarded by the studio developing the game. I don't really understand it. I know fans online can be terrible. They can be very frustrating to deal with and just horrendously annoying. But if your decisions are making your game fall off this hard to the point where nobody really seems to want to play it anymore, I just think that's kind of leaving your game in a sad state that it doesn't need to be in. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. What do you think could fix Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? Do you think anything could? Or do you think that those base mechanics that are built into the game that are so abusable are just so baked in and so hardwired in here with, so little around it that there is no saving it, that it's time to move on? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. If you enjoy the video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, we appreciate you very, very much. We do have a Fortnite code, which is DJAY123. And as well, we do have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop. Now, this store is incredible. My wife Jill runs it. And it is actually a store where we take manga, magazines, comic books, and more that have been damaged. The paper has been damaged, and we take those and we make something new out of them through recycling. We actually make resin coasters, keychains, trays, and more out of these damaged papers. We transform them through a new medium, and then we recycle the rest of it, actually keeping this stuff out of landfills. So we love doing that work over there. You can use code SAILOR for 10% off your first purchase, and Jill also makes very wonderful handmade resin jewelry and beaded jewelry and all kinds of great stuff over there. So regardless of who you are, there is something there for everyone, and we have a fantastic time. Hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, we'll see you in the next one.